A church bell tolls. Dust swirls across the town square. Shackles clink. A pregnant woman faced death for stealing bread, until the prince stopped the trial. The crowd gasped as the noose was lowered, but mercy came from the unlikeliest of places, spared from the gallows. She's dragged into the castle, where whispers crawl like snakes through candlelit halls. She owes her life to the man who saved her, but now she hears secrets that could destroy him. The nobles are watching. The walls are listening. And one false word could send her back to the noose. Why would a prince risk everything for a poor servant with nothing to her name? And when the truth comes out, will mercy be enough to save them both? Of boots across stone. A door slams. Silence. Comment below and tell me where in the world you're joining from. And if this story made you pause for a moment, hit that subscribe button for more. Dawn crept over the frost-dusted roofs of Valtheim, painting the narrow cobblestone alleys in pale winter light. Anna Muller pressed one hand against the rough stone wall of a building, the other clutching her swollen belly as hunger gnawed at her insides. The scent of fresh-baked bread wafted through the cold morning air, making her mouth water and her empty stomach clench painfully. Through bleary eyes, she watched the baker's boys hurrying past with their wooden trays piled high with steaming loaves. The aroma of crusty bread was almost too much to bear. She hadn't eaten in 2 days, and her unborn child needed nourishment. "Lord in heaven, forgive what I must do," she whispered, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. Her trembling fingers reached out as a young boy passed, his attention drawn by a cat darting across his path. In that moment of distraction, she grasped a warm loaf and tucked it beneath her threadbare shawl. "Thief! Stop that woman!" The boy's shrill cry shattered the morning quiet. Anna's heart lurched as heavy boots thundered against the cobblestones behind her. She tried to run, but her condition made her slow and clumsy. Rough hands seized her arms and the stolen bread tumbled to the ground. "Please," she begged as 2 guards dragged her toward the market square. "My baby only wanted to feed my baby." The guards paid no heed to her tears. More townspeople gathered as they marched her past the market's stalls, their faces a mixture of scorn and sympathy. Some women crossed themselves, whispering prayers. Others pointed and sneered. "Thieving wretch. Poor creature. ... With child, no less." The guards thrust her before the town magistrate, who sat at his high desk in the square. His face was lined with age and hardened by years of passing judgment. Anna's legs shook as she stood before him, her hands still held firmly by the guards. "Anna Muller," the magistrate's voice rang out across the hushed square. "Widow of Joseph Muller, the baker. You have been caught stealing bread, a crime punishable by death according to our laws." Gasps rippled through the growing crowd. A woman near the front called out, "But she carries a child, Your Honor." The magistrate's face remained impassive. "The law makes no exception for mothers-to-be. The sentence is death by hanging, to be carried out immediately." Anna's world spun as the guards dragged her toward the wooden platform where the hangman waited. Through her tears, she saw the rough hemp rope swaying in the winter wind. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, more urgent. "'Tis not right. The child is innocent. Someone must stop this." The hangman slipped the noose around her neck, the rough fiber scratching her skin. Anna closed her eyes, one hand still cradling her belly, silently begging forgiveness from the child she would never meet. Suddenly, the clip-clop of hooves and the rattle of carriage wheels echoed through the square. The crowd parted like water around a stone as an elegant black carriage drew to a halt before the platform. The door swung open, and Prince Leopold emerged, his tall figure wrapped in a dark cloak. His reputation for cold justice preceded him, and the townspeople bowed their heads in his presence. The prince's stern gaze swept over the scene, the pregnant woman with the noose around her neck, the restless crowd, the grim-faced magistrate. His gloved hand rose in a sharp gesture, and silence fell over the square. "Hold," he commanded, his voice carrying clearly through the winter air. The hangman's hand froze on the lever that would have ended Anna's life. The prince's penetrating gaze met Anna's tear-filled eyes, and for a moment, something flickered in their depths, something that belied his reputation for heartless judgment. The market square held its collective breath as Prince Leopold stood. At the foot of the platform, his raised hand still commanding the halt of the execution, while Anna trembled beneath the shadow of the noose, her fate suspended between life and death. The crowd parted like waves before a ship as Prince Leopold strode toward the courthouse, his polished boots clicking against the frost-covered cobblestones. The morning sun caught the gold buttons of his navy coat as guards scrambled to open the heavy wooden doors before him. "Bring the woman to my chambers," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of authority that made even the staunchest magistrates bow their heads. The courthouse chamber felt markedly warmer than the square outside, with a crackling fire casting dancing shadows on the oak-paneled walls. Anna was brought in, her hands bound before her, cheeks flushed from the cold and dark hair escaping its simple knot. Though her clothes were worn and patched, she held herself with quiet dignity. Leopold sat behind the massive desk, his stern features softened slightly by the firelight. "You are accused of stealing bread," he stated, his tone measured and formal. "Tell me why." Anna's voice trembled but remained clear. "Your Highness, I." She pressed one hand to her swollen belly. Gathering her courage, "I have not eaten in 2 days. The baby, ... Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away. "I could bear my own hunger, but I feared for my child." The prince's penetrating gaze studied her face, searching for any trace of deception. He found none. "You are a widow?" he inquired. "Yes, Your Highness, my husband." He ... double quotes. Anna swallowed hard. "The fever took him 3 months past. I had been taking in sewing, but with the baby coming..." She gestured helplessly to her condition. The magistrates, gathered in their black robes like a murder of crows, shifted impatiently. The eldest stepped forward, his jowls quivering with indignation. "Your Highness, the law is clear. Theft is punishable by death, regardless of circumstances. We cannot make exceptions, lest we encourage more criminal behavior." Leopold raised his hand for silence, never taking his eyes off Anna. "And what of the child she carries? Would you have us execute an innocent along with the mother?" "The law must be upheld," another magistrate insisted. "Otherwise, every pregnant woman might turn to theft." The prince rose from his seat, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the chamber floor. "The law exists to serve justice, not to destroy lives." He paused, considering. "I hereby commute the death sentence." A murmur rippled through the assembled officials. The head magistrate's face reddened. "But, Your Highness, instead," Leopold continued, his voice cutting through the protests, "she will serve in the castle until her debt to society is repaid. Her skills as a seamstress will not go to waste." The announcement sent shockwaves through the chamber. Nobles present at the trial exchanged scandalized glances, while the common folk who had squeezed in to watch whispered among themselves. A thief working in the prince's own household? Unheard of. Anna's legs trembled beneath her, as the full weight of the prince's decree settled over her. Life not just for her, but for her unborn child. Yet the thought of serving in the castle, under the cold gaze of the prince who had saved her, sent shivers down her spine that had nothing to do with the winter chill. As evening approached, guards helped Anna into a prison cart for the journey. To the castle, the iron-barred wagon creaked and swayed as it made its way through Waldheim's winding streets. Townspeople emerged from their shops and homes to watch her pass. their faces a mixture of pity and fascination. The castle loomed ahead, its gray stone walls catching the last rays of the setting sun. Anna pulled her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders as the cart climbed the winding road up the hill. Behind her, she could hear the townsfolk's whispers carrying on the wind. "Poor soul," one woman murmured. "From the gallows to the prince's. Household God alone knows which is worse." "That one's fate is sealed now," another replied. "Once you enter those castle gates, you belong to the prince's world, for better or worse." The cart rattled onward, and Anna watched as the massive castle gates drew ever closer, wondering what future awaited her behind those forbidding walls. The first rays of dawn crept through the narrow window of the servant quarters, rousing Anna from her fitful sleep on the thin straw mattress. Her back ached from the unfamiliar bed, and her hands instinctively cradled her swollen belly. The stone walls held the winter's chill, making her pull the rough blanket closer. "Up with you now," called the head housekeeper, Mistress Berta, her keys jangling at her waist as she swept through the dormitory. "Here's your work clothes, girl." She dropped a bundle of coarse brown fabric onto Anna's bed. The wool dress was plain but clean, though it stretched tight across Anna's middle. As she dressed, Mistress Berta watched with critical eyes. "Prince Leopold mentioned your skill with needle and thread. You'll be working in the sewing room, mending the castle's linens and garments." Anna nodded, remembering the years spent helping her late husband's cloth trade. "Yes, ma'am. I'm grateful for the work." "Grateful indeed," Mistress Berta sniffed. "Not every thief gets such mercy. Follow me." The sewing room buzzed with activity as half a dozen maids bent over their work. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating piles of linens, shirts, and bed hangings awaiting repair. The familiar scent of clean fabric and beeswax brought unexpected comfort to Anna's heart. "You'll sit here, mistress," Berta directed, pointing to a wooden stool. "Mind your stitches are small and even. The nobility notices every flaw." The hours stretched long as Anna's needle flew through torn hemlines and frayed cuffs. Akita, her fingers remembered their old skill, though her back protested the constant hunching. Other maids cast curious glances her way, whispering behind raised hands about the pregnant thief the prince had spared. By midday, Anna's neat work had earned grudging nods from her fellow seamstresses. "You've a good eye," murmured Agnes, gray-haired maid, passing her a crust of bread at their brief meal break. "We've needed another skilled hand." The afternoon brought more demanding tasks, mending delicate lace and embroidering initials on fine handkerchiefs. Anna's vision blurred in the fading light as candles were lit to continue working. Her feet had swollen in her shoes, and her child kicked restlessly within her. Through the open door drifted snippets of conversation from passing nobles. "Disgraceful," muttered one silk-clad lady, "common thief in the castle. The prince shows dangerous softness." "Indeed," replied her companion. "What next? Shall we invite all the rabble of Waldheim to dine at his table?" Anna bent lower over, her work cheeks burning, as she noticed other servants straightening their shoulders, sharing looks of quiet approval for Leopold's mercy. As evening settled over the castle, Anna was sent to fetch fresh water for the sewing room. Her arms trembled as she carried the heavy bucket through the torchlit corridors. Passing the council chamber, voices through the partially open door made her pause. "The old duke weakens daily," came a man's low voice. "Once he's gone, we must act swiftly. The documents are nearly perfect, none will question their authenticity. But if anyone discovers the forgery, ... double quotes, another voice worried. Who would dare challenge papers proving Leopold illegitimate? His cousin Franz will inherit instead, and he knows who to thank for his good fortune." Anna's heart thundered so loud, she feared they would hear it. The water bucket slipped from her numb fingers, sloshing quietly against her skirts. She hurried away on trembling legs, her mind whirling with the dangerous knowledge she now possessed. Back in the sewing room, she forced her hands to steady as she threaded her needle by candlelight. The evidence of treason burned in her thoughts, along with the memory of Leopold's mercy in the town square. What was she to do with such a secret? To speak might mean death, to stay silent might doom the prince who had saved her life. The candle flames flickered as Anna sewed into the night, each stitch a reminder of the precarious thread from which her fate now hung. Anna sat at the long wooden table in the sewing room, morning light streaming through tall windows onto piles of linens and garments awaiting repair. Her fingers trembled slightly as she pushed the needle through fine fabric, her mind heavy with the dangerous knowledge she carried. The overheard plot against Prince Leopold haunted her every waking moment. Each time she caught sight of certain courtiers in the halls, her heart would race, wondering if they suspected she had heard their schemes. The weight of their treasonous words pressed upon her conscience like a physical burden. Beside her, Mary, a kitchen maid with kind eyes and quick hands, noticed her distraction. "You're pulling the stitches too tight, dear," she whispered, reaching over to adjust Anna's work. "What troubles you so?" Anna glanced around the quiet room, where other servants bent over their mending. The steady rhythm of needles and thread usually brought her peace, but today it only emphasized her growing anxiety. Taking a deep breath, she leaned closer to Marie. "If someone knew of danger to the prince," she whispered, careful to keep her voice low, "what should they do?" Marie's fingers froze mid-stitch. Her face paled as she turned to Anna, eyes wide with alarm. "Listen well," she hissed, gripping Anna's arm with unexpected force. "Such knowledge is more dangerous than a viper in your bed. Keep silent if you value your life and that of your unborn child." The warning struck Anna like a physical blow. She bent her head back to her work, but noticed Marie watching her with worried eyes for the rest of the morning. As the days passed, Anna became aware of subtle changes in the castle's atmosphere. Lord Aldrich, one of the courtiers she had overheard that night, seemed to appear wherever she worked. His cold eyes followed her movements as she carried linens through the halls or fetched water from the well. Another conspirator, Baron Weber, had taken to questioning the other servants about her, asking innocent-seeming questions about her background and habits. The afternoon hunt brought unexpected opportunity. Anna was sorting through mending when Mistress Berta burst into the sewing room, Prince Leopold's formal riding coat in her arms. "A branch caught it during the chase," she explained briskly. "The prince requires it mended before tonight's dinner. You, Anna, your stitches are the finest. Come with me." Anna's heart thundered in her chest as she followed the housekeeper through the castle's winding corridors. They arrived at the prince's private chambers, where Leopold himself waited, dressed now in a simple shirt and breeches. He dismissed Mistress Berta with a gesture. "Your Highness," Anna curtsied deeply, despite her unwieldy condition. The prince's presence filled the room with quiet authority. Yet she sensed something different in his manner when they were alone, a softening around his eyes, perhaps. "The tear is here," he indicated, holding out the coat. Their fingers brushed as she took it, sending an unexpected warmth through her hand. She settled into a chair by the window, where the light was best, and began her work as she stitched. She felt his gaze upon her. Looking up, she met his eyes directly for the first time since the day of her trial. They were not cold at all, she realized, but thoughtful and observant. "Your Highness," she began carefully, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes loyalty can be found in unexpected places, while danger lurks among those who should be most trusted." Leopold's expression sharpened with interest. He took a step toward her, but before he could respond, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Anna quickly returned to her stitching as Lord Aldrich entered without knocking. "Your Highness, your father asks for you," Aldrich announced, his eyes narrowing as they fell on Anna. "A moment more to finish this repair," Leopold replied evenly. But Anna was already rising, gathering her sewing basket with trembling hands. "I have completed the most urgent mending, Your Highness," she murmured, backing toward the door. "With your permission, I will finish the rest in the sewing room." As she hurried away, she could feel both men's eyes upon her, Leopold's questioning. Aldrich is suspicious. Her secret knowledge weighed heavier than ever, and she prayed she had not said too much. The midsummer festival brought life and color to the usually somber castle halls. Servants scurried about like busy bees, draping garlands of fresh flowers and positioning brass candlesticks to cast warm light across stone walls. The great hall hummed with activity as maids polished silver platters until they gleamed like mirrors, while others arranged delicate pastries and fruits on tiered displays. Anna's fingers moved swiftly, stitching last-minute repairs to the festival banners. Though her back ached from hours of work, she couldn't help but smile at the festive atmosphere. The scent of honey cakes and roasted meats drifted up from the kitchen, making her mouth water. How long had it been since she'd known such simple pleasures? "Mind your work," the housekeeper scolded, noticing Anna's distraction. "Those banners must be perfect before sunset." Through the high windows, Anna watched townspeople streaming toward the festival grounds, their laughter carrying on the summer breeze. Children dashed between market stalls while musicians tuned their instruments. Her heart yearned to join them, to forget, if only for a moment, the burden of secrets she carried. As dusk settled over the town, torches blazed to life in the festival square. Anna slipped out with a group of castle maids, grateful for the chance to escape the confines of Dade's stone walls. The evening air was sweet with the perfume of night-blooming flowers, and the sky glowed with the last traces of sunset. She hadn't noticed the cloaked figure watching from the shadows. Prince Leopold had exchanged his fine garments for simple clothes, a dark hood hiding his distinctive features. Among the crowd, he was just another townsman enjoying the festivities. His eyes followed Anna as she moved through the gathering, her face bright with wonder at the jugglers and fire eaters performing nearby. The musicians struck up a lively tune, and couples began to form circles for dancing. Leopold moved purposefully through the crowd, his heart quickening as he approached Anna. She stood apart from the other maids, swaying slightly to the music. "Would you honor me with a dance?" he asked softly, extending his hand. In the flickering torchlight, she didn't recognize him at first. Anna hesitated, studying the stranger's partially hidden face. There was something familiar in his bearing, but the festival's magic had already begun to work its spell. "I would be glad to," she answered, placing her hand in his. They joined the whirling dancers as the music grew more spirited. Leopold led her through the steps with surprising grace, and Anna found herself laughing as they turned and stepped in time with the melody. Her worries seemed to float away like leaves on a stream, replaced by the simple joy of movement and music. "You dance well for a baker's widow," he murmured, close enough that only she could hear. Anna's steps faltered as recognition dawned. "You're high," she began, but Leopold squeezed her hand gently. "Tonight, I am simply Leopold," he whispered. "Please, let us have this moment free from titles and stations." They danced until the moon rose high above the festival grounds. Anna's cheeks flushed from exertion and something more dangerous, warmth that spread through her chest whenever their eyes met. For these precious hours, she could imagine herself just a woman, dancing with a man who looked at her as if she were the only person in the world. But all too soon, the spell began to fade. The castle bell tolled the late hour, and Leopold guided her discreetly toward his waiting carriage, hidden in a quiet lane away from prying eyes. As they rode back to the castle, silence fell between them. The gentle sway of the carriage reminded Anna of their dance, but now reality pressed in like a cold wind. Leopold's hand found hers in the darkness. "Thank you," he said softly, his thumb tracing circles on her palm, "for giving me one evening of truth among so many days of pretense." Anna trembled at his touch, acutely aware of how improper this moment was. If anyone discovered their midnight ride, the consequences would be severe. Yet she couldn't bring herself to withdraw her hand from his. Even as her mind screamed warnings about the dangerous path she trod, the carriage wheels rattled over cobblestones, carrying them back to a world where such tender moments could not exist. Still, Leopold's hand remained gentle over hers, a touch that spoke of longing and possibilities that neither dared voice aloud. The summer sun streamed through tall castle windows, but its warmth couldn't reach the chill that had settled in Anna's heart. 3 days had passed since the festival, and though she tried to keep to her duties, she felt eyes following her everywhere. She went. Lady Margaret's voice carried clearly across the drawing room where Anna mended a torn tapestry. "Did you see how he danced with her at the festival? A common criminal, no less." The lady's fingers fluttered like agitated birds as she spoke to her companion. "Indeed," Lady Elizabeth replied, not bothering to lower her voice. "The prince has hardly looked at any suitable ladies since that seamstress arrived. One must wonder what sort of ... charms she employs." Anna's cheeks burned, but she kept her head down, focusing on each careful stitch. The whispers had started the morning after the festival, spreading through the castle like wildfire. Servants who had once shown her kindness now avoided her gaze, fearful of being associated with someone who drew such dangerous attention in the kitchen. The cook clucked her tongue as Anna collected thread from the storage room. "Best watch yourself, girl. High-born ladies don't take kindly to common folk rising above their station." By midday, the castle buzzed with new tension. Anna noticed Lord Rothbart, one of the courtiers she'd overheard plotting against Leopold, speaking in hushed tones with several magistrates in the corridor. His eyes gleamed with malice when they met hers. The afternoon bell had barely finished tolling when guards burst into the sewing room. "Anna Muller," their captain announced, his voice hard as iron. "You are to come with us immediately." Heart pounding, Anna set aside her work and rose slowly. The other seamstresses pressed themselves against the walls, horror and fascination mingling on their faces. As the guards led her through the castle's winding corridors, whispers and pointing fingers followed their progress. The great hall had been transformed into a makeshift courtroom. Magistrates in their black robes sat in judgment, while nobles filled the gallery. Lord Rothbart stood before them, holding a sheaf of papers. "Your honors," he proclaimed, his voice ringing with false concern. "It grieves me to present evidence of this woman's schemes." Letters written in her own hand, detailing her plot to seduce His Highness and gain influence over the duchy. Anna's mouth fell open in shock. "Those are lies. I've written no such letters." "Silence," the chief magistrate commanded. He accepted the papers from Lord Rothbart, examining them with a frown. These appeared to be in a woman's hand, speaking of secret meetings and promises of favor. Furthermore, Lord Rothbart continued, multiple witnesses saw her alone with the prince in his private chambers, and later, stealing away with him during the festival. Murmurs of scandal rippled through the gathered crowd. "I was mending his coat," Anna protested, her voice trembling. And at the festival, she stopped herself, knowing that admitting to dancing with Leopold would only make things worse. Lady Margaret stepped forward, her silk skirts rustling. "I myself saw her trying to catch His Highness's eye at every turn. She's nothing but a common thief who sought to steal far more than bread." The chief magistrate's face darkened. Such behavior cannot be tolerated. This woman has brought dishonor to the house of Leopold and corrupted the dignity of his station. He raised his hand. "Take her to the dungeons until a proper sentence can be determined." "Please," Anna begged as the guards grabbed her arms. "My baby, I'm with child." But her pleas fell on deaf ears as they dragged her from the hall. The descent? Into the castle dungeons seemed endless. Each step took her further from the light, from warmth, from hope. The guards pushed her into a tiny cell, its stone walls slick with moisture, its floor scattered with moldy straw. The iron door clanged, shut with horrible finality. In the darkness, Anna sank to her knees, one hand pressed protectively over her swollen belly. The baby kicked, as if sensing her distress. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she thought of Leopold. Would he believe these lies? Would he remember the truth in her eyes as they danced? Or would duty and status win out over whatever tenderness had grown between them? "Dear Lord in heaven," she whispered, her voice echoing in the cold chamber. "Protect my child. Give me strength." She huddled in the corner, shivering as the dungeon's chill seeped into her bones. In the distance, water dripped steadily, marking time as she waited in darkness, uncertain if salvation or doom would find her first. The morning sun cast long shadows across the council chamber as Prince Leopold sat rigid in his carved wooden chair. Around the massive oak table, faces both familiar and hostile stared back at him. Lord Chancellor von Richter's voice echoed off the stone walls, each word precise and cutting. "Your Highness, surely you see the gravity of this situation," the Chancellor said, his jeweled rings catching the light as he gestured. "A common servant girl, already once condemned for theft, now stands accused of impropriety with your person. The nobility watches. The people whisper. We cannot allow such scandal to taint your line." Leopold's fingers tightened on the armrests of his chair, but his face remained impassive. Years of training had taught him to hide his thoughts behind a mask of stern dignity. Yet inside, his heart ached with an unfamiliar pain. "The woman carries a child," Baron Steiner added, his jowls quivering with barely contained disdain. "Even if the accusations are false, her very presence in the castle brings shame upon your house. She must be dealt with swiftly and decisively." Round the table, heads nodded in agreement. These men, Leopold realized, cared nothing for truth or justice. They saw only a threat to their ordered world, where nobles ruled and commoners knew their place. "What would you have me do?" Leopold asked, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. "Send an innocent woman to her death to preserve your delicate sensibilities." The Chancellor leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Your Highness, you must think of the principality. Your father's health fails daily. Soon, you will rule in his stead. Can you afford to risk everything? The stability of our land, the respect of neighboring kingdoms for one servant woman?" Leopold closed his eyes briefly, remembering Anna's face in the sewing room, the way she had tried to warn him. There had been no guile in her eyes then, only genuine concern for his safety. While these nobles spoke of honor and stability, they had shown him nothing but self-interest and deceit. As the council continued their arguments, Leopold made his decision. That evening, after the castle had grown quiet, he descended the winding stone steps to the dungeons. The guards snapped to attention, then retreated at his command. In the flickering torchlight, Leopold found Anna's cell. She sat on a thin straw pallet, her hands protectively cradling her swollen belly. Despite her circumstances, she lifted her chin with quiet dignity as he approached. "Tell me again," he said softly, "what you heard that night near the council chamber." Anna's voice trembled slightly, but her words were clear. "3 men, Your Highness. They spoke of forged documents, of changes to your father's will." Lord Steiner led them, saying how simple it would be to alter the seal, since he had access to your father's private chamber. She hesitated, then added, "They mentioned a chest of papers hidden in the old chapel crypt." Leopold's heart quickened. Only those intimate with the castle would know of the crypt's secret chamber. Every detail Anna shared bore the ring of truth. The nobles' habits, their private meeting places, even the particular ink they preferred for forgeries. "Why did you not come forward sooner?" I asked, though he already knew the answer. "Who would believe a thief?" Anna replied simply. "I am nothing in their eyes. Less than nothing." Her hand trembled as she brushed away a tear. I thought perhaps during the dance I might tell you. But then they accused. "You first," Leopold finished, understanding dawning like the sun after a storm. The conspirators had seen Anna as a threat, not because of any impropriety, but because she knew their secrets. Moving closer to the iron bars, Leopold reached through and took her hand. It was cold from the dungeon air, but her fingers curled trustingly around his. "Listen well, Anna," he said, his voice low but firm. "Trust me. I will not let them take you again." The torches sputtered in their brackets, casting shifting shadows across the rough stone walls. But in Anna's eyes, a small flame of hope began to burn. Warming the darkness that had settled in her heart, dawn broke over Waldheim Castle, its first. Rays painting the frost-covered windows of the great hall in shades of amber and gold. The deep toll of church bells echoed through the valley, calling the court to judgment. Nobles in their finest silks and velvets filed into the vast chamber, their whispers echoing off the ancient stone walls as they took their places on the wooden benches. The common folk of the town gathered at the back of the hall. Their rough wool cloaks and worn leather boots, a stark contrast to the nobles' finery. Beeswax candles flickered in iron sconces, casting dancing shadows across the tapestried walls where stern ancestors gazed down upon the assembly. The heavy oak doors groaned open. Anna Muller entered, her wrists bound in iron chains that clinked. With each careful step, though her simple gray dress was wrinkled from her night in the dungeon, she held her head high. Her face was pale but composed, one hand resting protectively over her swollen belly as the guards led her to stand before the raised dais. Lord Chancellor von Richter rose from his seat, his crimson robes sweeping the floor as he unfurled a scroll. "Anna Muller," his voice rang out, "you stand accused of grave impropriety against the noble house of Waldheim. Evidence has been presented of your attempts to seduce His Highness Prince Leopold for personal gain, bringing dishonor to this ancient lineage." From the gathered nobles, angry voices rose. "Cast her out," shouted Lady Margarethe, her jeweled fingers pointing accusingly. "Send her to the stocks where such creatures belong." "Back to the gallows with the thief," called Baron Weber, his jowled face red with indignation. The magistrates nodded gravely, their black robes rustling as they bent their heads together in consultation. The head magistrate raised his gavel, ready to pronounce sentence, when a commanding voice cut through the clamor. "Stop." Prince Leopold strode forward from the shadows where he had been watching. The morning light streaming through the high windows caught the gold threads in his formal jacket as he approached the dais. In his hands, he carried a leather folio tied with red ribbon. "Before judgment is passed," he said, his clear voice carrying to every corner of the hushed hall, "I have evidence of my own to present." He broke the seal on the folio and withdrew several papers. These documents were discovered in a secret compartment of Baron Weber's study. They detail a conspiracy not against my honor, but against my very inheritance. Gasps rippled through the assembly. Lady Margarethe's face went white as chalk. Baron Weber half rose from his seat, but guards moved swiftly to block his retreat. "These letters," Leopold continued, holding up sheets of parchment, "prove that certain members of this court planned to forge documents upon my father's death, documents that would have stripped me of my birthright. And this woman," he gestured to Anna, "risked her life to warn me of their treachery." The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. Anna's legs trembled beneath her as the full weight of the moment pressed upon her. The chains felt heavier than ever. As she watched Leopold lay out paper after damning paper. "Seize them," Leopold commanded, pointing to Baron Weber, Lady Margarethe, and 3 other nobles who had risen to flee. Guards rushed forward, their boots thundering on the stone floor as they surrounded the conspirators. The strain of the past days, the fear and uncertainty, finally overwhelmed Anna. Her knees buckled, and she began to sink to the floor, the chains rattling as she fell. But before she could collapse completely, strong hands caught her shoulders. Prince Leopold himself stood beside her, supporting her weight as he helped her back to her feet. With his free hand, he gestured to a guard who hurried forward with a ring of keys. "Remove these chains," Leopold ordered, his voice gentle but firm. "This woman is no criminal. She has shown more nobility in her heart than those who scheme in silk and velvet." The iron shackles fell away from Anna's wrists, clattering to the floor. "Let all assembled bear witness," Leopold declared to the packed hall, his hand still. Steadying Anna's elbow, "Anna Moeller is innocent of all charges. She has proven herself loyal to this house and to justice itself. Any who dare whisper otherwise will answer directly to me." The morning sun broke fully through the windows then, bathing Anna and Leopold in golden light as she stood free before the assembly. Her quiet dignity restored before all who had condemned her. Evening shadows lengthened across the castle courtyard. As servants hurried through torchlit corridors, their excited whispers echoing off stone walls. The day's dramatic events had set every tongue wagging, from the lowest kitchen maid to the highest-ranked lady-in-waiting. In the servants' quarters, maids huddled together, recounting how Prince Leopold had exposed the conspiracy and defended a common seamstress before the entire court in his private chamber. Leopold stood before the crackling hearth, his formal court attire replaced by a simple white shirt and dark breeches. Candlelight softened his usually stern features as he watched Anna enter, escorted by a trusted chambermaid who quietly withdrew, leaving the door slightly ajar for propriety's sake. "You risked everything to warn me," Leopold said softly, his eyes reflecting the dancing flames. "While those born to privilege plotted against their prince, you, a baker's widow condemned to serve, showed more loyalty than any noble in my court." Anna smoothed her gray wool dress, her fingers trembling slightly. "Your Highness saved my life that day in the square. I could do no less than try to save yours." "Leopold," he corrected gently. "When we are alone, I would hear my name from your lips, not my title." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the cedar and leather scent of him. "These past months, watching you work without complaint, seeing your kindness to others despite your own troubles, you have shown me what true nobility means." Anna's heart thundered in her chest, but she took a step backward, one hand protectively cradling her swollen belly. "My Lord Leopold, we cannot. Think of the scandal, the harm to your position. My child would be scorned, caught between two worlds, neither common nor noble. I have thought of nothing else since the festival night." When we danced, Leopold admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "That evening, disguised as a common man, I felt more myself than in all my years of court training. You saw me, Anna. Not the prince, but the man." Tears welled in Anna's eyes. "The nobles would never accept it. They would say, I bewitched you. That I planned this from the moment you spared me from the gallows." "Let them talk," Leopold declared, taking her trembling hands in his. "I am heir to this principality, and I tell you now, my reign must be built on character, not the accident of birth. How can I rule justly if I deny justice to my own heart?" "But your father," Anna began. "My father taught me that a prince's first duty is to his people. What better way to serve them than to show that worth comes not from title and land, but from honor and truth?" He lifted her chin gently. "You have both in abundance, Anna Moeller." A tear slipped down Anna's cheek. "I never dared dream of such things." "Then dream now," Leopold said softly, dropping to one knee before her. "Be my wife, my princess, my partner in building a better world for all our people, including this little one." His hand rested briefly on her rounded belly. Sunday morning dawned clear and crisp over Waldheim town. The church bells pealed their familiar call to worship as townspeople filed into the ancient stone cathedral, shaking frost from their cloaks. They settled into worn wooden pews, breath visible in the cold air as they waited for the service to begin. The priest stepped forward, adjusting his vestments. "I publish the banns of marriage," he intoned, his voice echoing off vaulted ceilings. "Between His Highness, Prince Leopold Wilhelm Waldheim, and Mistress Anna Muller, both of this parish." A wave of gasps swept through the congregation. In the back pews, the baker's wife clutched her husband's arm. "The same girl who nearly hanged for stealing bread," she whispered. Near the front, wealthy merchants exchanged startled glances with minor nobles. But among the common folk, other whispers rose of how the prince had spared a desperate mother, of how that same woman had later saved him from treachery of justice, tempered with mercy. Old Hans the carpenter nodded approvingly. "Perhaps," he murmured to his wife, "we shall see a new kind of ruling house, one that knows both high and low." The priest continued reading the formal announcement, his voice steady and clear in the hushed church, while morning sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, painting the scene in jeweled colors, as if heaven itself blessed this unprecedented. Union candlelight danced across ancient stone walls as the castle chapel filled with nobles and commoners alike. Hundreds of beeswax candles cast a warm glow over the vaulted ceiling, their light reflecting off polished wooden pews. The air was sweet with winter greenery and fresh-cut pine boughs decorating every corner. Anna stood at the chapel entrance, her heart fluttering beneath a simple, cream-colored gown adorned with delicate lace, the handiwork of her fellow seamstresses. The women of the servant hall gathered around her like protective sisters, straightening her veil and whispering words of encouragement. These were the ones who had taken her in, taught her the castle's ways, and become her true family. As the organ's first notes filled the chapel, Anna walked slowly down the aisle, supported by Martha, the head housekeeper, and Jane, the kitchen mistress who had first shown her kindness. Her advanced pregnancy made each step careful, but her face glowed with quiet joy. At the altar, Leopold watched her approach, his eyes never leaving her face. When she reached him, he took her hands in his, their fingers intertwining before the priest. The golden ring he placed upon her finger caught the candlelight, a simple band that represented not just their love, but a new way of ruling, where mercy and compassion would stand above the rigid laws of class and custom. That very night, as music and laughter echoed through the castle halls, Anna's labor pains began. The celebrations turned to anxious waiting, with Leopold pacing outside the chamber door until a healthy cry pierced the night air. Their child had arrived safely, strong and perfect. In the quiet hours before dawn, Leopold sat beside Anna's bed, watching as she rocked their newborn son. The fire crackled low in the hearth, casting warm light over the three of them. He reached out, covering her hand with his own as it rested on the baby's blanket. Through the castle and into the town below, word spread quickly their prince had chosen love over tradition, and in doing so had made their realm stronger. Not through power or ancient bloodlines, but through the simple truth that compassion makes the wisest rule of all. Thanks for taking a moment to feel with me. If this story reminded you of what matters, hit subscribe. I'll be here tomorrow, continuing our story.